63-62. We could go through the box score, and I guess that's relevant to some degree, but it's the end. That is really, it's not that they lost to Texas A&M, right? Texas A&M, the number 13 team in the country. Texas A&M has the most ranked wins in college basketball. It's not that you lose to Texas A&M. People are going to lose to A&M. Buzz is a really good coach. They're a tough team. That happens. Mm-hmm. It's not that it happened. It's how it happened.
It's 100% how it happened.
It's how it happened. Like when they went up to Memphis and got beat, you just got beat. You know, Memphis just beat you that day. Yeah. They were better than you that day. Texas A&M was not better than Ole Miss last night. But it doesn't matter because for the last, really, people keep saying the last 4 minutes. I understand why, but really the last 2 minutes of the game, forgive the disgusting imagery, Ole Miss just vomited all over themselves for 2 minutes. Did everything imaginable wrong. You had at the very end, a missed front end of a 1-and-1. You had a turnover on an inbound. You had just a bad pass turnover. You had a backcourt violation, a 10-second violation. Couldn't get the ball across midcourt. A pair of goaltendings. Now, I don't blame the player for trying to make a play, but still, it happened, right? Everything that could go wrong in the final 2 minutes of the game, Ole Miss failed at and cost themselves an opportunity at another quad one win to start league play at 5-1. And with the schedule they got coming up, I mean, you got to go to Missouri, and then Texas is a nice break at home next week because they're not a particularly good team on your home floor. But then it's Kentucky and Auburn. So with the schedule getting more difficult, 5-1 would have felt a lot different than even 4-2. And the way they lost that game is just, it's hard to stomach. It was impossible to watch almost. You kind of find yourself looking away from, you're just like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. They completely and totally, undoubtedly, I mean, just cost themselves the game. They vomited on themselves. They blew it last night. That's all that happened. They blew it. And
you have to be concerned because that is the kind of loss where you lose twice. That is, if you're Ole Miss, you talk about needing to flush it. You made a vomit joke, so I guess the flushing it would be appropriate. They cannot let that linger because they got to go take on a really good Missouri team that would love nothing more than knock off Ole Miss. They have to flush this loss, and that is the kind of loss that is really, really hard to get over. So I'm interested to see how the Rebels respond this weekend.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though, hey, Dad. It wasn't just last night. There's now a new concern for Ole Miss basketball just dropped, to use a phrase that the kids are saying. Closing games. Mm-hmm. They are bad at closing games. Happened last night, obviously. You're up 8 with 1:52 left. You win that game. I mean, when you're up 8 with 1:52 left, you've got people like me getting the postgame podcast ready, and I already had like the prompt written, Ole Miss survives a rock fight with a talented Texas A&M team.
Oh, so you're the reason they lost.
I didn't publish it, though. I didn't put it anywhere.
No. I always sit next to Robbie in the basketball, and he'll start writing out final, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what are you doing?
I was prepared to talk about that because when you're up 8 with 1:52, you win.
But then.
And then same thing in Starkville. Now, they did a really good job at fighting back, and Matt Morrell made the big shot, but who executed in overtime and who made the big mistake in overtime? Their opponent executed. Their opponent made the plays. It wasn't just the hustle for the block, right? Morrell should have dunked it, but it wasn't just that. It was after the block shot, 5 passes, great break offense for Mississippi State, leading to an open 3 in ball game.
Right.
Ole Miss didn't do that. And even Alabama on Tuesday, which is still an outstanding win that's going to age like a really, really fine bottle of wine, that game got weird late. Ole Miss was in control of that second half until the last couple of minutes, and it just got weird. They started letting that game go. They ended up winning, but they didn't close well. Their Purdue loss is another one. I know we're going back into non-conference play, but opportunities to win that game, they did not close well. And it's a team with veterans on it, veteran ball handlers, guys that shouldn't do what happened last night, and they did it again. That is now a concern. Can they close tight ball games? Because the sample size as of this moment is no. And in this league, you're going to have tight ball games. I promise you they're going to have one on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you going to be able to execute, or are you going to do what you've done for, frankly, the last three games?
I guess we'll talk a little bit more about this because we're coming up on the break here. So do you think this Ole Miss team is not – I mean, teams that don't perform well in the final minutes, I would say aren't well coached. Are you saying that? Do you think that this team, for whatever reason, isn't well coached, or is it a problem with the players?
They're well coached in a lot of areas. There are some issues with preparedness for the moment. There's no doubt. I mean, if you do what they did down the stretch, how can you not question that? Especially not calling a timeout when you have the 10-second in that turnover. You have a timeout. That is. You have to do that. You cannot give the ball away there. So there are some questions there. We'll get to more of this and read some of your messages when we come back. To the text line. Beard lost his mind playing Barnes instead of Juju, shooting 60% from the line and hasn't shot a free throw in 3 games. He continues to say Juju could have helped close that game over Barnes. Closed fine, great in the 4 wins in conference. They did have big leads, though. But again, even the Alabama game got weird there for a while. So there's kind of an issue there.
Yeah.
The last 4 minutes of almost every game gets tighter for a reason. Mississippi State controlled most of the game versus Ole Miss, but closed better and sent the game to overtime. That never should have gone there. See South Carolina versus Florida.
South Carolina, Florida was a very interesting game. But we had a lot of this week. We had a lot of these crazy comebacks and things like that.
But South Carolina, Florida demonstrates why, if you have a chance to beat somebody at home, you got to do it.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk more about that game tomorrow. But South Carolina has nearly beaten Auburn and nearly beaten Florida. They've got to be chomping at the bit to get Mississippi State in there.
Yeah. Also, you had a breakaway steal that was called for traveling. A bit of a questionable call there, but there's another one, right? There's another turnover. It would have been 2 points taken off the board because of a travel. I understand why the ref called it, because the break field was between the ball and the official, and so the official couldn't see that he didn't have control of the ball. He was kind of fumbling the ball a little bit when he took that extra step, didn't have possession. But another instance where they kind of screwed it up there. Another game with getting dominated on the glass. Absolutely dominated on the glass again last night. Texas A&M, the best offensive rebounding team in America. Tom Hart told all of you about 100 times last night, but for a good reason. I mean, they showed that. But that's the thing. That's what's so interesting about this team right now, and I do this thing on the podcast where I say, okay, here's positive spin, here's negative spin, and you can fit the truth right in between the two. So the negative spin is they had an 8-point lead with 1:52 to go, and they blew it. They have struggled closing games. That was a disaster. Like, the way that ended was a disaster, right? Now they've lost 2 in a row. They got to go to Missouri. That's a tough place to play. The schedule's getting tougher. It's not good, and that could disrupt their psyche. Positive spin, if you're looking for it, they're 4-2 in the SEC. Everybody would have taken that running at this point. The metrics love them still. Mm-hmm. They are essentially 4 wins away from guaranteeing themselves being in the NCAA tournament. They defend really, really well, and they did it yet again last night. They're an elite defensive basketball team. Mm-hmm. And you would hope that because they have such a veteran presence really all over the team that they can mentally recover from something like this, lock back in, and go play well on Saturday. So they're still fine from a schedule, metrics, wins perspective. All good there. Losing to the number 13 team isn't going to cost you a bid to the tournament. The truth is somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah. It's a tough loss. Like I said, the biggest concern for me, if you're Ole Miss, is letting this one beat you twice. This game Saturday is a big game, quad one opportunity for you on the road there. You got to get that win. You don't want to lose again. Because, and it's the same thing with State, right? With State playing South Carolina this week. State loses to South Carolina, then they've lost 4 out of 5, and they got to play Alabama. So now all of a sudden you're looking at 5 out of 6. Not good.
Not good.
Ole Miss loses to Missouri. Who do they play next week? Who's the first game?
Ole Miss next week, Texas. Yeah. At home.
Should be able to get that one, but you're talking about going in with a 3-game losing streak at that point.
Yeah.
And these things are going to snowball, and there's just no nights off right now in this conference. Playing Texas at home is probably as close as you can get to one right this second.
That or South Carolina or LSU at home. I mean, and even still. Somebody sends us a gif of somebody saying, this close, basketball 2 SEC losses, 4 points, football 3 losses, 13 points. I'll make it even worse for you. Ole Miss has 3 losses in basketball, or 4 losses in basketball. 3 of them, 3 points, 1 point, 1 point. 5 combined points. They lost 3 of their 4 games in. That's tough. It's really tough. Somebody says, heard you on radio with Chuck, Brian. Good job. You're my boy, Blue. You were on with Chuck today?
Yesterday.
He's great.
Yesterday, yeah.
Bill says, these players did not execute the game plan for the last 4 minutes. I was there. It was brutal. Beard cannot play for them. Now, that's part of it, right, is you can question some things from a coaching perspective. Their preparedness for that moment, you have to wonder, have they done enough? What can they do from a coaching perspective to better prepare their team to not, as I keep saying, vomit all over themselves when the time calls for it? Because that's what they did last night.
None of that happening.
You can call a timeout before you.
Well, the thing is, like, a well-coached team is prepared for those moments. And the problem I have with it is Chris Beard isn't a top-tier coach, right? I think I think he has his guys ready, but there's some disconnect here in those final. Look, and that
You've
last
had a couple of really bad decisions from veteran guards that they shouldn't make those decisions.
That last sequence, say what you want, Brakefield gets an open look. Yep. He's got to sink that shot. So, they come down the court, they get the ball into the guy who you probably want to have because Morrell had a bad game last night.
You want Brakefield to have the ball.
You want Brakefield to have the ball. He gets clear and has a little floater that he could get in there, and it just rims out. I don't know what more they could have done there. I understand everything to that point that had happened that had cost them.
Yeah.
But at the very last possible second, they had a shot to win the game, and the shot just doesn't go in.
Mm-hmm. And I had people, like in my Twitter mentions last night, talking about how Brakefield, that was selfish from Brakefield. It's a great look. It missed. You can't judge basketball, or any sport really, but especially basketball, on it's good if it goes in and it's bad if it's not, and it's black and white. It's a bad shot if it doesn't go in. It was not a bad shot. He just didn't. He probably rushed it a little. Part of me wonders if, like, he was almost shocked by how quickly he got to the rim, and maybe he thought he got fouled a little bit, but it's a good look. Your guy that's played a dozen years of college basketball 6 feet from the rim, and he just missed it.
Yeah.
That's a fine look. That is certainly not a selfish play in any way. I saw some of that last night, and I didn't like that. Somebody says Barnes should not have been in the game at the end. Definitely not the person you want to be getting fouled in that spot to make the front end of a 1-and-1. You've got, you saw Brakefield do it on Tuesday of last week in Tuscaloosa, where he made 6 consecutive free throws to bury the game. You got to find a way to get him the ball in that spot, or even Morrell, somebody that is more dependable in that spot.
Morrell is. If you want to really circle what happened, where it goes wrong, Morrell, he had 5, right? 5 points?
Yeah, he had a really rough game last night.
You can't get that from Morrell. Morrell has to. We've been talking about Hubbard these past few weeks. Morrell is the same guy. He has to be there for Ole Miss. If he doesn't show up, and even with Hubbard and the struggles that he's had, he's been in double figures basically every game. He's finding a way to get some points. Ole Miss can't win games where Morrell has 5 points.
And especially something that, I'm not a coach. The next basketball game my coach will be the first one. But Ole Miss shot 4 free throws last night. And people were saying, well, it was poorly officiated. I disagree. I think that they do not do a good enough job of attacking on offense. A guy like Matt Morrell, with how athletic he is, and he can get to the basket. He showed it early a couple times, and just, I don't know if it was a lack of confidence, because when he would get to the rim, he missed a couple of easy looks at the rim last night. And maybe that just destroyed his confidence, paired with rolling his ankle. I don't know. But you can't get foul calls if you're not creating contact. And they don't create contact. Enough of it anyway, especially from their guards. They had a free throw discrepancy in Starkville as well. So it's a trend. they don't get to the line enough because I don't think they attack enough offensively. Mm-hmm. And that's an easy way to get a guy like Morrell some confidence too, right? As he attacks the basket, draws some contact, takes 2 free throws, and he just gets to see the ball go in a couple of times, and he goes back and plays defense, and you build confidence. They didn't shoot 3 free throws last night because of poor officiating. Mm-hmm. They did it because they're not attacking on offense. And that leads to scoring droughts and things like that.
That's been a thing with Beard since he's been there at Ole Miss. They shoot so many jump shots, it's tough to get to the free throw line.
See some disconnect between he and others. Yeah, that inbound turnover, threw the ball where he thought Brakefield was going to be, and Brakefield was not there, and a lack of communication there. Jeff said, I couldn't believe the announcer said that Ole Miss couldn't communicate defensively because of the crowd noise. I've never heard that said of a home team.
He said that?
The announcers? When you're on defense and the crowd is loud, it is harder to communicate. I don't think that's like...
Yeah, but that's a good point. I've never heard them say the home team is having trouble.
Well, they do communicate a lot defensively. Okay. But they played a really great defensive game last night.
Yeah, so maybe 63 points, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with State the other day. It's like, defensively, you did enough.
Yeah. And that's another layer, too, last night. And although I hate being this guy, I really don't like being this guy, but there is a segment of Ole Miss fans that need to grow up a little bit. I understand
you're preaching to the choir over here.
I understand like the post-game meltdown of what just happened that was awful, but I'm out. This is an NIT team. When does baseball start? If you're one of those people, you're a loser. I'm so sorry. Like I hate being that guy. But if one loss to the number 13 team in the country means I'm out and I'll see you at baseball season, like you're excited for the team that has lost more games than anybody else in the SEC over the last 2 years because of one 1-point loss to the number 13 team in basketball, you're out. And they're an NIT team only. Either toughen up or pickleball is something that's probably a little bit more for your speed. Jeez, man. One loss and you're melding down to the point where you are checking out of a ranked team that's 4-2 in league play? You loser. What are you doing?
Very hard loss.
Don't watch on Saturday then. Don't turn around Saturday and be excited if they go beat Missouri.
You can't handle them at their worst. You don't deserve them at their best.
Exactly. I get being mad. Fans should be mad today, especially the ones that are financially invested, the ones that made the trip that went last night. But if that's costing you your attention for the season, come on. Yeah. What do you? My toddler's got more emotional stability than that. Anyway, Morrell is not 100% healthy. Yeah, rolled his ankle again last night. Announcer said last night that the lack of foul calls in these SEC games will get SEC teams hammered in the tournament. If it's a light whistle in the tournament, yeah, but if you've got a crew that's letting them play a little bit, then they're equipped for it. It's so weird, Haydad. It happened in Starkville as well. You went from having a really physical half where they let the boys play to the second half where it's like they just started blowing everything.
It switched, yeah. I don't know why.
Why does that happen?
Do we have time?
Why does that happen?
For her to talk about how poor officiating is? This one made me laugh. Why on earth would you be looking forward to Ole Miss baseball after the last couple of seasons? God. That guy's an Ole Miss fan too. He's being honest.
Somebody says in Beard's post-game interview, he said they played well enough to win. I don't agree with that. When you play well enough to win, you win. You don't drop an 8-point lead to lose in the last second.
I disagree with that, though.
They did play well enough to win.
Yeah, like State played well enough to win against Kentucky.
Yes.
They just didn't win. Yeah. Sometimes you do everything. Again, I didn't mean to hit the mic there, but again, Brakefield has a shot, a good look. He's open to win the game, and it just doesn't go in.
They played. They had an 8-point lead with 2 minutes left. They played well enough to win.
I was in a group text. I had the game on, but I wasn't really paying attention. And then my daughter and I were watching wrestling too. So the wrestling's on the TV, and I have the game on the laptop. And I kind of just tuned out of the game, and I get a text like, "Oh my God!" And I was like, "What?" And I looked at the. I was like, "Wait, what? No, what?"
So he says, talk about pickleball like that again, and this 63-year-old will kick your you-know-what all over the court. Bring it. Now,
I think I would smoke you.
He would smoke.
Let you know. I can just tell from the text, you're not getting a point.
I'm not disparaging the playing of pickleball. It looks like a blast. Mm-hmm. And a viral thing that's getting people out and active, that's awesome. I meant those people that couldn't handle one loss to the point where they're quitting on the team altogether need to become fans of a pickleball team. That's what I meant. But I'll play with you. I've never played before.
Oh, you get smoked.
I'm cool with that, though. Yeah. Ole Miss has the easiest road schedule in the SEC. How do they get so many tough games at home? Let's see what they got coming up. So Missouri on Saturday. It's a ranked Missouri team on the road. Not exactly a cakewalk there.
Nah, yeah, that's a tough game.
3 straight home games, Texas, Auburn, and Kentucky.
Oof, Auburn and Kentucky. Oof.
Yeah.
You talk about an Ole Miss team struggling to score. Kentucky is not the team you want to see.
No. But they defended Alabama and kept them in the 60s.
True.
So
True.
They defend well enough to keep themselves in every game. Yeah. But you've got to execute when you get there.
Yeah.
At South Carolina and LSU, at LSU and South Carolina. And then
should be 2 wins there.
Mississippi State at home.
We'll see.
Ole Miss will be favored by 5 to 6, I think. Depending.
We got to depend. Yeah, we got to see what's happening.
If that game was Saturday,
Saturday, Ole Miss would be about a 4 or 5 point favorite. Yeah, that's basically this. What was the spread when they came to Starkville? It was basically about the same.
Something like that.
Yeah.
At Vanderbilt, at Auburn, Oklahoma at home, Tennessee.
Oh, you got
home,
Auburn twice.
They get Auburn twice,
that's
and then
unlucky.
They finish the season in Gainesville.
Oh, yeah, I remember the end of the schedule is really tough for Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They need to make some hay. That's why letting that one get away last night. Again, this is Ole Miss. They're going to make the tournament. That's not a concern. But you cost yourself losing that game last night. You cost yourself somewhere down the line.
Absolutely. Or they got to go pick up another upset somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll put basketball to bed. That was a good, long dissection of what happened in Oxford last night. As Haydad said earlier, I mean, we're going to find out that this team has been tough to this point when it comes to, overcoming adversity, right? Both within games and after losses. Like they got smoked by Memphis and turned around and had a stretch of really good play. Mississippi State's got a 14-point lead after what felt like 30 seconds in Starkville, and they force overtime. Like they've shown that they've got some toughness. Saturday's a big test for them. They blow a game, very, very tough loss. Can they get off the mat and play well? And if they do Saturday, then all good. But if for whatever reason this game turns into another one, then there might be a problem. Only way to know is when they actually take the floor and play.